I have invested in stocks, mutual funds, ETFs, bonds. I've even thrown a little bit of cash into the cryptocurrency casino. But in my hand, I hold one of the worst investments I have ever made. Hey everyone, and welcome back. I am the Part-Time Economist, and in today's video, I wanted to share one of the worst investments I have ever made. Now keep in mind, I am sharing my personal experiences. It may be totally different than what you have experienced. I'm just sharing what I have went through, so please do not take this as any kind of financial advice. With that being said, get ready for the big reveal. One of the worst investments I have ever made is silver coins. Now, I know a lot of people have very strong feelings regarding gold and silver. One of the primary feelings being that gold and silver aren't investments. They're designed to preserve your purchasing power, and I will address that later in the video. Just really quickly, I wanted to give an outline of the video. I'll talk about how I got into silver, what my reasoning was, how my returns on silver were. Hint, they weren't very good. And then kind of going forward, talk about gold and silver. So with that being said, I started investing in silver about 2011. Now, if you know anything about the precious metals markets, you know that was the absolute worst possible time to invest. So again, that's why I'm being clear that my returns on silver are likely very different than what you have experienced. I've done really good with some things in the stock market, and then I've made some really bad decisions. I just bought in at the worst possible time for silver. Obviously, if you buy anything at the peak, it doesn't matter what it is, you're going to lose money because by definition, you bought at the peak, right? There's nowhere but down to go. In any case, I did buy in about 2011. I was just in my freshman year of college. I was seeing everything going on with the money printing and QE infinity, and I was really concerned about the possibility of hyperinflation, so I actually took a part-time job for the sole purpose of getting cash to put into precious metals, right? So that was my thought process. I was trying to preserve my wealth, and I accumulated a small portfolio of silver and just a tiny, tiny bit of gold. The important thing for our story, though, is that, again, I was buying silver around $40 to $45 a coin in some instances, depending on shipping, things like that. So again, I bought in at the peak. Now, the fact that I know I bought in at the peak doesn't discount that I've lost money in silver. If we look, the current price of silver is about $25. You might get $1 or $2 over spot, depending on what coin you're selling, but then you've got to pay shipping, you've got to drive there. So let's just call it, we'll say, I think it's fair to say that I could probably get $25 per coin. At the time I'm recording this video, let's say that I purchased, inclusive of shipping, handling, everything, let's suppose that I purchased at about $40 a coin. So I'm down $15 per coin. So obviously that's, from an investment perspective, that is a significant loss of money, right? And again, I hear people coming, they're saying silver is an investment. It preserves your purchasing power. Again, we will get to that, but strictly looking at it from an investment perspective, because that's what I want to address first. Just my experience, it hasn't worked out for me, right? But I don't want that to color my thoughts going forward. If someone gave me the chance today and said, look, forget about your previous losses, would you buy silver? I think it would be a really hard sell for me for a couple reasons. Number one, if we look back over the past decade or so, even if we get rid of the peak, silver just hasn't done that crazy, amazing performance for me, right? I'm more familiar with the stock market. I'm more familiar with how securities, bonds, stocks, ETFs, mutual funds, I'm more familiar with how those things work. And at least in my perspective, they've just had a lot better performance as an investment, right? Again, I know you guys are waiting. We will get to the part about preserving your wealth. But as an investment, silver and gold, they just don't seem to be doing it for me. Another thing with silver and gold is the liquidity issue. You pay a ton of money on the premiums. So this coin here, about 20% of the price comes from the premium. So again, I know that's not anything nefarious on the part of the coin dealers, right? It takes money to refine this, to stamp it, to ship it, right? Again, it's just a feature of how bullion coins work. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's still a factor, right? So if you were to buy this, turn around and sell it, you would lose 20% of your value. Or to think about it a different way, if you were to buy this and hold on to it, you would have to wait till it goes up 20% in value just to break even. Now, obviously, if you buy larger denominations, you get bars instead of coins, you can cut that premium down, but still, something like 5% is considerable. When you think about the stock market, the spread is like 1 cent sometimes between some of the most actively traded ETFs. So again, for me as an investment, I just don't see it having great performance. I see there being a lot of risk with having to store it, transport it. I see the spreads, the transaction costs. As an investment, it just isn't worth it for me. That being said, these are really cool. They look beautiful. I obviously still have some because, again, I think they're cool. I think they're beautiful. So, but I'm not putting that as my primary investment. That being said, the main argument as I see for gold and silver is that if the end of the world happens, if the government goes off its hinges and devalues the dollar, then this will preserve your purchasing power. And there's a couple thoughts that I have with that. The first is that in order to preserve your purchasing power, think about it this way. If the dollar's going down in value, which again, I agree with people that stack gold and silver, it is. It's objectively true. The dollar is declining in purchasing power. In order to preserve your purchasing power, the dollar value of this has to go up. Let me give you an example. If in 2011, instead of buying a $45 silver coin, if I would have put $45 under my mattress, I would still have $45. Yes, that $45 would buy less than it would in 2011, but $45 under my mattress would buy more than the $25 I could get from selling this coin. So in order to preserve your purchasing power, the dollar value of these has to go up. The amount of goods and services you can buy with one of these has to at least remain the same. So again, in my experience, that was not the case. Even if we're looking back at more kind of stable times, right? So discount the peaks. Again, you would have to go up at least by the amount of inflation to preserve your purchasing power. I know these are fixed assets. I know that you can't just print them into existence, but they're still governed by the laws of supply and demand. And even if there is only a certain amount of gold and silver, if people aren't demanding it and the value falls, then there goes kind of the purchasing power argument. Now, again, people will say, look, this is long term, right? We've all heard the example. A gold coin during the Roman period can buy a suit. It can still buy a suit. Yes, most of us do not have lifespans that are 2 millennia, right? Most of us, if we're lucky, life expectancy in the US for a man, I think is like 76, 77. Let's suppose you get lucky, you live to 90, right? There can still be massive fluctuations within that time period, right? So that's one thought. And then kind of the final thought that I have is that I'm not just trying to preserve my wealth. I want to grow my wealth. I want to achieve financial independence. So that kind of presents me with 2 scenarios. One, I have the scenario of, look, we live in a society that functions more or less, right? We have this infrastructure. We have these systems. If I'm living in that world, I want to grow my wealth. I want to achieve, again, financial independence. And for me personally, within this system, I'm more familiar with stocks. I know how the market works. I would rather grow my wealth. The other scenario we have is, okay, society completely collapses. In that example, it's like, okay, it's Mad Max scenario. What is this going to do for me? I can't eat it. I can't use it to protect myself, right? I would much rather have food, medical supplies, security implements, we will call them, since we can't name them on YouTube. But you get what I'm saying, right? Things that are essential to your survival, right? If I have these things, I can easily trade them for gold or silver. On the flip side, if I only have gold or silver, who is going to give up essential life-giving supplies for this piece of metal, right? I mean, yeah, if you have extra, it's better to have it than not have it, right? But I'm saying I think there's priorities that I would get before gold and silver. Not saying they're completely worthless, obviously. But those are just kind of my thoughts. The one thing I do want to close out with is that when it comes to precious metals, I think I'm a little bit more favorable to gold, simply because I did buy some gold, a very, very small amount, back when I was purchasing my silver, and it went up by like $10, I think. Now, keep in mind, going up $10 over a period of 12 or 13 years is still less than a 1% return. It's still below the level of inflation. I have still lost purchasing power, but I think at least knowing in dollar terms it went up makes me feel a little bit better. But even moving forward, gold generally has lower premiums. You can see here again on this graph by JM Bullion. The premiums on gold do appear to be a little bit lower. It's more transportable, right? If we are in an end of the world type scenario, how many pounds of silver am I going to have to carry around to be able to purchase something that has any significant value, right? If I need a can of beans, yeah, maybe this, but realistically, I'm not going to be trying to buy a can of beans every day. I'm going to want to stock up, right? I'm going to say, hey, give me a 50-pound sack of rice. Give me, something like that. The weight of silver I see being a disadvantage in an end-of-the-world scenario, whereas gold, it is more transportable. And then kind of bringing it back to the modern day as well, gold is used as a financial instrument. Central banks purchase gold. I think in most people's consciousness, it has kind of an association of value. It's very distinguishable, right? There's a lot of metals that look similar to silver. Gold has some unique properties that I think make it a little bit more identifiable. So I do have a little bit more soft spot, I guess you could say. Ironic considering that gold is such a soft metal. I do have a little bit more favorable predisposition, I guess, to gold. Again, that's just me. I'm not telling you what to do or what's best or anything like that. I think overall, I probably wouldn't invest in silver for sure. I wouldn't probably get any more unless it was like a really cool coin that I just wanted for the numismatic value, kind of like a collector piece. Gold, I might have just a small, very, very small percentage of my portfolio in it. Again, if it was something that I really liked and kind of that maybe like 1% or 0.5% of my total value, just as kind of that worst case hedge, right? So those are my thoughts. Obviously, like I've said countless times, this isn't financial advice. Those of you that do like stacking gold and silver, I am not here to hate on your hobby. I watch a lot of gold and silver stacking videos, Yankee stacking, spectacular, silver dragons. I love watching those things, right? Because I like coins. I think they're cool. But just for me as an investment, haven't really worked out. So I hope you found the video useful. Interested to hear your experiences if you wanted to share, and I will see you in the next one.